I don't think it's much of a stretch to say that people tend to expect specific types of content from specific types of content creators. And I'm not talking about things like expecting a cynical analysis of Human Oddities by Omegon or a discussion on prejudice in the art community by Thuman. I'm talking about types of content that fit into specific genres of content creation. From gaming channels, you expect video game commentary, game reviews, or Easter egg compilations. From prank channels, you expect pranks, funny men, and illegal destruction of private property. And with regards to art commentary content, this is no different. There are specific types of videos and topics that one expects from artists who make video content. Things like how your childhood art teacher didn't like you drawing anime, character creation exercises, or pet peeves that only creatives will relate to. Stuff of that nature. Things that I am starting to realize my channel is severely lacking in. For the most part, at least. The closest thing I could look to would maybe be the video talking about how I totally missed out on a totally real $60,000 per year comic book job that was a totally real thing that would have happened. But even then, that's like, what, one video? Then that's a fairly recent one compared to my other content. Oh, well, I guess I did that one spooky character creation video that one time too. I also understand that this is because my channel didn't start as an art commentary channel, it started as a slideshow commentary channel. It's just that through all of my pushing to create assets for an art commentary channel more focused around my interests as a person, I haven't really made that same push into the content topics themselves. Sure, maybe you could count my cringy artist series, but those videos are literally parodies of content I don't agree with from the early art ranting community, and it inherently mocks content of that ilk, so I don't think it really counts. So, with the intention of really pushing myself into the art commentary scene, I felt it only appropriate to dish out a new video detailing one of the stranger experiences that helped to form the current, overly cynical view that I have when it comes to creating work for others. Namely, I'm gonna talk about the commission experience that forever changed how I would go about doing commissions. That probably sounds more dramatic than it actually is. Now, before we delve too deeply into this pool, I want to preempt that I have nothing against the person who will be on the other side of this exchange. It might seem like I should, but I think too much time has passed at this point for me to really care. In the end, while there could have been some nefarious intentions, I prefer to just assume ignorance, and it's not exactly like it went anywhere. The only thing really wasted was my time. Preemptive note, don't ask me for a commission. If you do, I'll assume that you're joking. As per usual, I won't be naming and shaming because that ain't cool, so we'll be giving this person an appropriate nickname. I shall call them The Apprentice. You will understand why in due time. Okay, so The Apprentice first contacted me on Fur Affinity. Yes, surprise, I have a Fur Affinity account, however, since I don't use the account too frequently, it took me a while before I actually saw their message, which was inquiring about my willingness to do a commission for them. At the time, I was all too happy to accept almost any commission that people threw at me. I had never yet been presented with a job that was too outlandish or too outside of my comfort zone, and in that regard, I feel like I've been exceptionally lucky. Like, you always hear those horror stories about artists being approached by fetishists or scam artists or people who try to get you to commission characters they stole from someone else, or the persona of someone they're stalking, or even people who go on to use your commission work to try and scam others, but I never really had any of those experiences. Not that I know of, anyway. With my uneventful commission history for context, of course I jumped at the chance to do another. One of the reasons I made a Fur Affinity account was because furries have a reputation for being excellent commissioners, and that was a customer base I was excited to tap into if given the opportunity. I messaged them back informing them that my commissions were indeed open and that I was willing to accept. The next message, before I even understood the parameters of what I would be doing for them, before even reading through the bulk of the message, I noticed that it provided a link to one of the necessary reference images I would need to complete their request. I clicked on the link, only to be greeted with a full-body nude photograph of The Apprentice. Oh my lord. And if simply mentioning that isn't getting across how insanely bizarre and unexpected this was for me, there was no warning in the preemptive message that what I would be clicking on was effectively an unsolicited nude, or admittedly, if there was, I must have missed it somehow, and at this point I just don't remember it. I thought I was clicking on a reference image for the character they wanted me to draw. But there it was, staring me in the face. People talk about getting unsolicited pics, but I get the unsolicited nude reference model. Side note, unsolicited pics, also a thing I have remarkably never experienced. I mean, up until this point, I guess. I call that the benefit of people assuming you're a dude. You know, up until I got popular off of an avatar in a dress. Yeah, so already I'm having things thrown at me that I not only didn't expect, but just flat out did not sign up for. Even back then, I was a pretty private person, so I was seeing way more of a commissioner than I ever wanted or expected to. I don't think I was even aware that what I was gonna be drawing for them would be not safe for work. It probably didn't help that the pose the apprentice had made when taking the image was unique? Like, if I were to describe it, I would do so by saying that it looked as though they were actively attempting to go Super Saiyan. And as if that alone wasn't enough for me to be side-eyeing the apprentice something fierce, the commission style they ordered also happened to be the cheapest possible thing they could get for what they wanted. So it's not even like I was making a good chunk of change from it. Oh yeah, and I was dating someone at the time. Someone who, guaranteed, would not have been happy to know that some rando online just sent me a full body nude. I sincerely doubt it would have mattered that it was supposed to be for a commission. Like, what if I had opened that image up in front of my significant other, or a family member, or like, I don't know, someone that shouldn't be seeing images like that? The apprentice basically digitally flashed me, "I did not consent to this, thank you." At this point though, I've already seen the image, it's already been irreparably seared into my brain to such an extent that I can still quite clearly picture the whole thing in my head in vivid detail 6 years later. It's not like they can do more damage, right? Right? I finished the piece, send it over to the apprentice, they're happy, I'm paid. Now after this, I definitely veered away from using fur affinity. I don't know if it was specifically because of that commission and how much it weirded me out, or if I was just in the midst of one of my platform breaks, but let's be real, it was probably at least partially because of that commission. Either way, the apprentice couldn't stand for it. See, unbeknownst to me, the apprentice had continued to message me on my fur affinity account, and after months of being met with complete inactivity in return, they turned to the next logical step. They tracked me down on DeviantArt and messaged me there instead. As you do. Turns out they had another commission for me. Thankfully, no more reference nudes at least. The nude they had already sent me would have served as the necessary reference for any other pieces they wanted, meaning anytime they commissioned me, I had to go back to thinking about and drawing things based on that image. My, how thoughtful of you. Now, the DeviantArt messages, and specifically the tail end of the next work I did for them, is not only the point at which things started to get a little out of hand, as if we weren't at that stage already, but also happened to be where the apprentice started to show what they really wanted from me. I slowly learned that what the apprentice wanted wasn't just commissions. They wanted a senpai.
Senpai, 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 senpai.
Oh boy. Over the course of a day, they sent a couple different messages asking about my artistic process. At first glance, it seems pretty flattering, right? This was way before I was really known anywhere, I guess. I mean, I had a small following, but I don't think I really had someone take an interest in my art to such an extent that they would ask the specifics about how I went about making it. And I think whatever few times it did happen, it was always just a half compliment with the end goal of getting me to draw free art for them. Don't fall for that, by the way, kiddos. It just leaves you feeling used by the end of it. Anyways, the way the apprentice framed it, they asked about the artistic process specifically resulting in the artistic development between a bunch of different, completely unrelated pieces, all of which had vastly different tones, characters, and intents. These weren't pieces that I had done close together either, mind you. These pieces were years apart in the making. First, they cited this piece, Hold My Hand, from all the way back in May of 2009, literally a piece I made when I was in high school, asking about the changes I applied to my style leading up to this piece of my character Frankie from July of 2010, and then to this commission piece called Baby Fat from March 2014. So like, pretty large gaps in time to be asking about there. I'm not exactly sure a lot of high schoolers really analyze their own work to such an extent, but hey, the question definitely got me thinking about it, and I certainly tried. I explained that Hold My Hand was done in the midst of an anime phase, and that at the time I didn't really know how to ink things effectively in Photoshop, so I did all of my inking straight on paper and scanned them into a computer afterwards. You could basically tell which pieces I did this on because the lines were exceptionally weak, and half the time the coloring would blur the edges something fierce. It just full stop doesn't look good. Then 2010 rolls around and all of a sudden I'm practicing doing line art on the computer. Frankie just happened to be my guinea pig at the time because the story I was crafting for him and his co-star Decker was perpetually on my mind, since by that point I was in my superhero comics phase and Frankie was one of my heroes. Still very weak line art. By the time Baby Fat came about, I was way more comfortable in doing digital art to such an extent that I had even started sketching the process itself in digital programs, and I was pretty happy with the results. Oh, you think we're done? No, because now the apprentice wants to know about the artistic development specifically between Strike a Pose 2, leading up to a cover piece idea I did for another comic idea called Ish 99 Lost, and then from between the 31st page of chapter 5 of the self-insert webcomic I was drawing, Demonics, leading to that piece with Frankie again. Not much to say about Strike a Pose 2, it's pretty garbage because I straight up didn't know how to shade in the program I was using at the time, that being Macromedia f***ing Flash. Like, okay, get this. If you know Flash, you'll get how f***ing stupid this was. So I would draw blocks of solid black where the shadows were supposed to be, turn it into an object, and then blur it. That's actually how I tried to go about coloring. It's so bizarre looking back on it nowadays. I did the same thing for highlights, except I used white.
You don't want to be like this. This is disgusting. This is awful in every way. If I could kill it, I would. But I legally can't.
Thank God I grew out of that technique fairly quickly. There wasn't a lot of active growth attempted between that Demonics page and the Frankie Baxter picture that I can really speak on, other than maybe some attempts to fiddle with the size of the brush that I was using a little more. Honestly, the line work in both of them look horrendous. You can tell I was basically afraid to have my lines touching, and it just looks so piddly and weak. This wasn't exactly how I phrased it to the apprentice. I definitely tried to make it sound like I had put a lot more thought into it beforehand than I actually had. Similar to how you bullshit your art teacher about the meaning behind a piece because you're getting graded on it. But this is the gist of what I was getting across to them. Within that bullshitting, I'd also explained that a lot of the style change probably came about because I was veering way more into Western comics rather than just anime and manga. The apprentice then asked what I learned from Western comics that took me from anime and more into, as phrased by them, stylized realism. Which, I mean, okay. Pretty simple explanation in that regard. A lot of the manga and anime I engaged with was very samey, but Western comics gave me a lot more to work with, not just in stylistic differences, but also in things like line weight and coloring, since manga is very rarely fully colored. Definitely helped that I am a degenerate 90s obsessed nerd, and the 90s was wild for the comic book industry. Whether that wild era is a good or bad thing in your eyes is entirely up to you, but I happened to revel in and draw a lot of inspiration from that ridiculousness. Definitely should do some videos on 90s comics at some point. It's after all of this explaining that we really start getting to the meat of things, as the apprentice then specifically started asking about my sketching process and brought up this sketch I had done of a minimalist piece of Junjun from Sailor Moon. In fact, they wanted me to break down my sketching process for them, bit by bit. So I did. While I was working on one of my Ponder Sprocket video thumbnails, this one, I would stop myself multiple times to scan the piece, because this was back when I drew on paper and used a scanner, so that by the end I was able to put them all together into this step-by-step breakdown, which I then uploaded into my scraps so I could send the apprentice a link. The day after I provided this link, they sent me a new message, where they had tried to mimic my sketching process in order to make their own copy of one of the commissions that I had drawn for them. Like, okay, yes, Technically, when I hand over a commission, that piece now belongs to the commissioner. I merely retain rights to acknowledge that I drew the piece and use it as examples of work that I have done, whether that be uploading it to a social media site or in videos like these. Based on how I do commissions, the commissioning party is within their rights to do almost whatever they want with that piece that doesn't include altering the piece itself. But if you were going to train yourself off of my work, specifically by tracing over it to learn the exact nature of how I construct human forms from the ground up, why would you tell me that? Why would you show me that? Why would you come to me asking for pointers on how to do it more effectively? Why in the ass crack of hell would I want to teach one of my commissioners how to draw like me? Doesn't that sort of defeat the whole point of my freaking job? And while the concept of what the apprentice was doing here was not lost to me at the time, remember, they also preempted a bunch of their messages asking questions about and showing interest in my art. And they were a commissioner. Even if they were purposely buying the cheapest possible thing and trying to exploit a loophole in my commission terms to get even more for cheaper, me being a people pleaser who sucked at confrontation, I kinda just took it. Oh, did I not mention that before? Yeah, unbeknownst to me when I made my commission terms, there was a loophole that allowed for a person to request the cheapest option and then just keep tacking more things onto the commission for even cheaper. Basically, it allowed them to get a lot of different pieces all bundled into one and for a stupidly low price, especially given that the apprentice was getting not safe for work pieces that required me looking at their unsolicited nude body whenever I worked on them. That alone I should have charged them more for. Obviously, I didn't realize this could be a problem when creating my terms. This loophole became the apprentice's go-to means of commissioning me. They would gather up a slew of different things they wanted, pay for one piece in full, and then tack all of the rest of them on as a 50% off addition to my price that was already way too freaking cheap. And yes, I know that this was my fault initially. I didn't notice the loophole, nor did I say anything about it at the time, and so people coming and taking advantage of that was on me. Despite that, I feel like I'm allowed to be irked that someone professed interest in my art while purposely exploiting a loophole in my commission terms so that they didn't have to pay me, the artist they apparently respected, a reasonable wage, and used that to manipulate me into being their unwilling teacher. Honestly, if it was just the loophole-based commissions and the rest of my interactions with them never happened, I probably wouldn't have even given it a second thought. So anyways, the apprentice sends me their mock-up asking how they did. Very much unnerved and put off by the realization that they were trying to mimic my work, but also being very not good at confrontation, I merely replied that they did a good job. No. The apprentice wants criticism. They specifically want to know how they can do better. Over the course of this day, I reluctantly provided the criticisms they asked for, to which they then moved on to asking specifically how I turned triangles into feet, and how I went about blocking particularly difficult or strange poses, since part of the discussion about my sketching process involved how I broke down the human body and forms into basic shapes. They provided a second set of character designs as examples, and basically wanted a breakdown on how I figured out each of the poses I drew for their previous commission. Ugh. Few days pass, we're at the start of a new month, and the apprentice messages me again with, of course, another commission. They sent a follow-up note the very next day, inquiring as to why I hadn't yet responded because, to quote their message directly, "You're usually pretty quick to respond to notes." I guess so long as you discount the fact that I wasn't responding on Fur Affinity and you literally had to track me down on DeviantArt because of my inactivity. Like, bruh couldn't even wait a freaking day. I don't like receiving notes. If you've been on my DeviantArt account recently, you'll know I just straight up don't read private messages anymore. And this was already showing to me that if I didn't respond right away, not only would the apprentice go out of their way to try and find me somewhere else, they wouldn't wait for a response and tried to press me into responding faster.
And now I'm totally stressed.
I feel like I have reason to be irked by this. Not only that, but the apprentice now had a new request to tack on, that being that they wanted me to send them work-in-progress shots for every stage of the sketching process for this new slew of that they already weren't paying me enough for. So basically, my method of providing that for them once completely freaking backfired, and now they wanted it for every commission they got from me, despite the fact that this wasn't even a thing I offered for commissions. But because The Apprentice doesn't exist at the center of the universe, when I got back to them, I had to inform them that they would have to wait, because I already had a bunch of other commissions in my queue, and I wouldn't be taking on any new ones until I finished what I was working on. Yeah, shocker, that's why I wasn't responding within a day. I was working on better paying commissions from other people. It wasn't until the 7th of the month that I freed up enough space that I could take on another of the apprentice's commissions, which was a fucking mistake, because this is when their commission requests started getting obnoxious. Not even in terms of the additional requests made on top of the commissions. No, I'm talking about the exploitation of the loophole in my terms. I did say that I could provide the work in progress shots that they wanted, but that I was going to do so at the end of the commission process, to which I would send them all the work in progresses and the finished piece all at once. Mostly this was because I recognized that individually sending each screenshot and having to do this inane back and forth, okay, but how did you know that the torso is made of these shapes, was a completely unnecessary waste of my time, and it would have interrupted my artistic flow, which isn't easy to get going again once you force it to stop. The fact that the apprentice couldn't wait a day for a response just confirmed to me that this would be an issue. Like, I can draw for hours on end to such an extent that I will forget to eat, go to the bathroom, sleep, or even sometimes breathe during that process. The latter one isn't as much of an issue anymore, don't worry. But if I stop that process to go do something else, 90% of the time I can't get it going again and I'm just done for the day. So yeah, the apprentice's constant wants for interruptions and explanations was really only delaying my ability to get any substantial amount of work done, which included the commissions they apparently couldn't wait a day to get confirmation on. By the 25th of the month, of course, they sent me another message. See, at the time, I had a little currently working on thing in my DeviantArt journal, which I would update every once in a while when I remembered to. The apprentice, not satisfied with those non-regular updates, decided that instead of just recognizing that I was probably too busy to remember to update it, decided to message me asking about the status of their latest commission. I informed them that I was still working on other commissions ahead of theirs, and so I didn't have any updates for them, because remember, I had informed them that my queue was full at the beginning of the month, and it was only by getting a few other pieces done that I had room to include theirs, but that still meant I had other commissions in my freaking queue. Now, around this time, the tablet I was using had broken. Actually, that's not true. I threw the pen at my brother and that broke, and this tablet brand no longer sold the pen separately for some freaking reason. You could only buy it alongside a whole new tablet, so it just seemed like the perfect time to upgrade. So I had recently bought and switched to a display tablet. You know, the ones that are like a monitor on their own and you can draw directly on them. I sent the apprentice a note informing them of this change, as well as the fact that I would be switching to sketching entirely digitally. This was my way of saving myself time when saving their work in progress shots, because all I had to do was save a duplicate image of what I was currently drawing. No more having to remember to stop drawing at certain intervals, go to the scanner, spend 10 minutes scanning the piece, and then hoping that I can continue. Woohoo! On the 17th, the apprentice sent back a reply asking for the Photoshop file, something I also straight up didn't offer as a part of my commissions. On the 18th, they requested to add more onto the commission I was already working on, once again exploiting the loophole to try and get these additions for stupid cheap. They even included the stupid cheap price as a part of the message to remind me of my own prices, I guess? As if I wouldn't just instinctively know by this point because of how many times they've already done this. This is the point where I started saying no. This particular commission was already way larger than the previous ones, and now they wanted to tack on even more when they were already so impatient about how long it was taking? Yeah, no. I told the apprentice that they had basically maxed out what they could ask for at that price, and if they wanted more, then they would have to order a whole new commission and pay full price for it. Welp. Lo and behold, they agreed. Not exactly a shock, it was basically a difference of $4. By the first of the next month, I accepted this additional new commission and informed them how much it would cost. At this point, their stinginess was really starting to shine through because they asked about the PayPal transfer fee that I included in all of my commission prices, which included the commissions that they had already ordered from me. They felt the need to remind me how much my own commissions cost, but apparently never noticed the PayPal transfer fee? Yeah, I call bull. If I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, maybe they didn't notice it before because it was so small because of how cheaply they were getting all of these commissions, but now because they were ordering something much larger, still relatively cheap mind you, the transfer fee scaled to match because it was based on a percentage of the commission price. Side note, I can't remember if the additions they tacked on to earlier commissions had that transfer fee included, so I might have actually been losing more money on these commissions than I originally thought. Almost like clockwork, on the 7th of that month, the apprentice sent me another request to add more to the newest commission. Again, loophole. Since they had already demonstrated impatience in waiting for the piece I was currently working on, I had to point out that the more they tacked on for me to do, the longer it would take for me to get any single piece finished. This was especially because, even back then, I didn't always work on the same piece throughout my artistic bursts. I tend to flip between a bunch of different projects, which means the more I have to work on, the longer it takes for any one thing to get finished. The next day, the apprentice asked for a work-in-progress shot so they could see how far along I was on the other commission. Something I told them I only wanted to have to provide at the end of the process, but whatever, I guess. Clearly, I was right about them being impatient. It's not like I still had other commissions in my queue, which they knew about that I would have been working on before theirs or something. I sent it. Sure thing, on the 9th, the exact thing I wanted to avoid happened, in that they started asking questions about the process and how I did it, meaning I had to take time out of actually doing the commissions to go answer their questions, lest they get impatient and send me even more messages because I'm not answering fast enough. At the time, when I did digital sketching, I liked to do it in different colors so I could separate the final sketch lines from the guidelines, similar to how you draw guidelines on paper much lighter than you do the final image lines. The final sketch lines for this one were blue and the guidelines were orange. I let the apprentice know that all of the lines they saw in the work in progress shot they were asking about would be included in the final .psd file, which I had agreed to send them. They then asked for an additional work in progress, this time showing all of the orange guidelines I was using, to which I had to inform them that what they saw was literally all there was and there wasn't more to show. Like, the orange guidelines were literally just sticks and balls, so I knew where the bones and joints were supposed to go. This wasn't exactly rocket science, and I straight up don't understand why they thought there was supposed to be more that I either just wasn't showing them or planned to delete, when I told them that all of the sketch work I did would be included in the file when I sent it to them. On the 10th, they sent another message asking for copies of the work in progresses for one of the earlier commissions, which I had already sent to them. I think they assumed that there was more that I was just holding back on because they specified that they wanted the same in-progress shots that broke down all the different shapes I made the body out of, except the problem was that those shots didn't exist. I drew a stick figure to give me an idea of how the body would be posed, and then I drew the body over top. That was it. I didn't need to break down the body into all of these tiny little shapes because I already had a better understanding of the human body. Guidelines are supposed to help me, as the artist, figure out where everything needs to go, and if I don't need those guidelines anymore, then why would I make extra work for myself and needlessly clutter up the piece? What the apprentice got was all there was, and still they were asking for more. Please, sir, may I have some more? Just a crumb of additional sketchwork? This same day, they sent me another mock-up imitation they had done of another one of the commissions I'd done for them, asking if the skeletal structure looked right. Gee, I don't know, it's not like it's based on one that I already drew. Of course I'm gonna think it looks right. The 11th rolls around, and the apprentice sends me another freaking message asking that I not delete any of the skeletal structures for the commission I was currently working on for them. Now feeling like a broken record, I informed them that I literally hadn't deleted anything. I just wasn't using as many guidelines to draw the pieces because I was getting better. Like, am I crazy? It feels like they thought I was hiding this stuff from them. Almost as if even they realized that an artist would have reason to not reveal their techniques to a commissioner who's all but admitted they were trying to mimic your work to such a degree that you yourself are now obsolete. Please note, by this point, they've now requested updates and additional input from me every day for 5 days in a row. That's now 5 days where, after being told this is what happens, they are interrupting my artistic process so I'm not getting these commissions done. Oh, but then I get a break because they don't message me again until the 15th. Such a nice reprieve, right? Sure, until the message from the 15th rolls around where they inform me that they have now changed their request to wanting me to draw the skeletal structures for the characters and send them that piece before I put the details on the characters. So basically, they want me to draw the skeletal structure, then the body's basic shapes, and then the design details that fleshed it out, which was already the thing I was trying to bypass by speeding up my sketching process. The apprentice had gotten to the point where they were deliberately asking me to take additional steps to overcomplicate and drag out the process, so I would be spending extra time on these pieces that I was already being grossly underpaid for, and had to look at their Super Saiyan sweaty ass specifically for their convenience so that they could better copy my work. They were asking me to purposely be less efficient with my work so that I could give them special treatment and provide them with things that weren't freaking offered as a part of my commission process. And they wanted me to teach them how to make my job obsolete while I'm doing it. Like, the freaking nerve.
You are the most insolent child I've ever had the misfortune to teach.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, the same day I had to basically tell them that if I'm not in the mood to draw that day, they're not getting anything. Because I would rather wait until I can produce something of value instead of giving a commissioner a poor quality product. Which, looking back on it, just makes me think they were dissatisfied with not getting daily updates from me. Another thing I never offered. 2 days later, on the 17th, the apprentice posed 2 new questions to me. Looking at this nowadays, I'm getting the impression that they were becoming aware that I was quickly losing my patience with them, and so they turned to asking about my artistic process again to re-butter me up. They asked me how I learned to visualize the pose a body would be in simply from the curve of the back of the head and how the pelvis was tilted, as well as how the cranial bulge on the back of the head worked when using a sphere to create the skull. The answer to the first question was basically that I already knew what pose I wanted to draw the character in when sketching, and that angling the spine and pelvis just helps me visualize it better when putting it to paper. That way I can fiddle with the proportions until I get something that looks right. The spheres I use to create heads are equally just a means of figuring out where the head is supposed to go, and doesn't necessarily reflect on the head's final shape. If anything, it's more to help me visualize where the face is supposed to go, not necessarily the back of the skull. Finally, 2 days later on the 19th, I finished the commission and I sent it over. The apprentice gave me 2 months reprieve before they contacted me again. The next time they contacted me, they did so asking about some books that I had earlier cited as being the place where I learned the stick and ball technique that I still use to this day to figure out where limbs and joints are supposed to go. Specifically, I learned them from some How to Draw Spider-Man and How to Draw Ghost Rider books from Marvel. The apprentice then asked, "What refinements do you do that deviate the most from these skeletons?" Basically asking what I did extra that wasn't included as a part of the tutorials in these books. So, the apprentice has access to the books that taught me these techniques, but once again, they're showing their hand by specifically wanting to know how I've built on top of what I've already learned, instead of just using the same books I learned from to teach themselves the basics and build on it from there. Either way, the answer to that was already something I had told them, that I used basic geometric shapes to map out the human body. Rectangles or squares for the chest, pentagons or triangles for the groin, triangles for the feet, blah blah blah. A technique I had also learned from these books. I simply refined it to use not only more shapes, but also more specific shapes. They asked if those extra shapes were visible in the commissions I had done for them, which, bruh, if I said I used the shapes to map out the human body when drawing, then they are visible in every human body. That's the whole point of using the shapes. Sure, not every body is going to have the exact same shapes, because body types are a thing, but the whole point of learning this technique is so that you understand how to break down the body into these easily identifiable shapes. This back and forth went on for 2 days, and it was mostly them asking for examples based on the commissions I had done for them, so it's whatever. 2 days later, and the apprentice starts getting more pedantic, asking things like how you figured out noses from studying comics/anatomy books. Obviously, the answer was still to just look at a human body and try to see how many geometric shapes you can use to make one yourself. But then they still wanted more, asking how I would use that technique to break down a nose or an eye. And I'm not even exaggerating here, they specifically asked about how to do it for noses and eyes. They couldn't even take some personal initiative to just look at an eye and see that it's a circle inside of an oval, or that a nose is just a rectangle for the bridge, a ball at the end of it, and 2 triangles for the nostrils. They seriously needed me to break it down for them. When I said that everything else was just additional dressing on top of those shapes, they asked for clarification, the next day, on what I meant. Oh, I don't know, man. Maybe things like wrinkles and nipples and curves and freckles and the natural bumps on the human body. Like, we're not actually made of perfect geometric shapes. The apprentice wanted to know if there was a book I had learned these additional dressing techniques from, which, nope, you just have to look at a person. The next day, they sent me a note asking what the oval I described as being a part of the breakdown of an eye was for. Eyelids! The oval is the eyelids! They asked me how I drew lips, dicks, and drapery. No, I'm not kidding about that second one. Asked for more breakdowns, I gave them. Except with regards to drapery, because I didn't think I would be able to effectively convey how I did that over text. That would require, like, visual aids, and I was already providing the apprentice with way more than I was willing to. Reminder, the apprentice is not paying me currently. They're just sending me more questions. I'm not even working on a commission for them by this point. They then asked what Western comics in particular had most informed my artistic style. I gave those too. The next day, the 22nd, they sent me their mock-up of the breakdown of an eye as I had described it. Provided you took the least charitable interpretation of my words, because what they showed me was a circle inside of an oval with no overlap, despite being told that the oval was supposed to be the eyelids, which do overlap on top of the f***ing eyeball. They couldn't even figure out that these geometric shapes I used as examples were supposed to overlay and cross over one another, not just perfectly touch at the edges. Like, I'm straight up convinced they were not looking at actual pictures of a human being while doing this. The one f***ing thing you're supposed to do when learning how to draw the human body. It was like describing how to draw a human body to an alien who's never seen a human before.
Bite me, alien boy!
By the 23rd, they still weren't getting it. So I had to draw a circle inside of an oval, like an eye, to show them what I meant. I feel like it's really apparent that I would make a horrible teacher. The apprentice then asked, how does the wrapping of the eyelid around the eye work for this method? Oh, so you know the eyelid is supposed to wrap around the eyeball. You were just being an annoying twat.
She's in a mood.
Completely fed up with the asinine back and forth by this point, I responded, dude, just look at an eye. I can't really break it down any further than this. I'm not a great teacher. Word for word. Then, on New Year's Eve, I get yet another message from the apprentice asking, how do you go about detailing heads, namely the jaws and cheeks? To which I responded in arguably the most I'm so f***ing done with you in this conversation manner possible, I don't know, I just do them. And then I gave them a link to a warm-up sheet I'd done on the 6th of a bunch of heads and jawlines from various angles. Which, admittedly, looking back on it, was not very good, but I guess that's the nature of practice. This was the point where I was very past having enough to do with this person, and so I finally got over my fear of confrontation and displeasing others, and I sent the following message. Look, I don't mean to be rude, but I've grown pretty tired of all the art-related questions as of late. I'm not a teacher, I don't make myself out to be one, and it's time-consuming and unnecessarily stress-inducing for me to have to be constantly answering your questions regarding how to do art. I'm not a social person, and receiving constant messages is stressful, especially if it involves extra work on my part when I'm already swamped enough as it is. I would appreciate it greatly if you not continue to ask me in depth about how I do my art, as I cannot break it down any further for you than I already have. Please refer to tutorials and anatomy books for further reference. They responded, my deepest apologies, your art struck me in awe and I'm sorry for putting you through such stress. I'll stop with the constant prodding. Thank you very much for what you have taught me so far. I appreciated that and told them as much. They then asked if they could still ask for the roughs to their commissions with the different colored lines for each stage in the process, to which I said I couldn't guarantee that. Doesn't matter either way because I don't think I ever received another commission from them, and I closed my commissions not long after that point anyways. Yes, it was almost entirely because of this interaction with this commissioner that I closed my commissions. Up until I reopened my commissions in February of 2019. The apprentice worms their way out of the woodwork for the first time in a couple years, indicating that since my commissions are open again, they would like to commission something from me like the last time. Oh, but I was ready for them.
You triggered my trap card!
See, I'd changed my commission terms of purchase since then, and I did it specifically to remove the loophole that the apprentice had been exploiting. When I informed them of this, they asked for clarification, wondering if that meant that there would no longer be discounts, or if it had to do with a limit on how many things could be included in a single commission. In fact, what it actually meant was that not only were all of my commissions priced higher than before to actually accommodate my time, but also that the add X thing for X stupidly low price no longer applied in any instance where it didn't tie together into a cohesive piece. So basically, if you wanted to commission a set of 5 characters from me and have all of them interacting together as a part of a full piece, I don't know, maybe they're at a tea party or something, that would be totally fine and the discount would apply. But if it was 5 pieces of the same character in different outfits just mashed together into the same bundle, the discount wouldn't apply, and you would have to pay full price for each of them as a separate commission, whether you wanted them included in the same image or not. And I never heard from them again!
You didn't see that coming.
So much for being awestruck over my art. I guess that only applies when I'm being grossly underpaid. Hitting 2024, that's what happens when it takes you forever to make a video. I don't really hold anything against, nor do I detest The Apprentice. Yeah, I'm not super stoked about the additional pressures that they put on me, nor the fact that their naked body is seared into my brain. They could probably do with learning that the artists you commission are there to give you a handmade product based on your specifications, not to teach you how to do their job. Like, imagine if you hired a mechanic to work on your car, and after fixing whatever issue you had, you bring in another car where you've attempted to do the same thing and ask for them to critique your attempt. And then afterwards, you start questioning the specifics of how they know what to do as a mechanic. And you keep coming in and asking them all these questions, even at a point when you're not paying them to be your mechanic. It's just odd. Maybe flattering at first glance, but odd when it progresses past a certain point. But like I've said before, you can't always assume malice when ignorance will so neatly fit the mold. So for all I know, this was just someone with a legitimate interest in my art, taking advantage of what they thought was a good deal, completely ignorant of how this would have looked from my side. At this point, it's just a weird, funny, slightly irksome past experience that I can share for a laugh and a lesson with others. So that was the commission experience that forever shaped how how I would go about doing commissions in the future. I mean, technically you could argue that any commission I've done contributed to that outcome to some degree, but I think this is the one that I got the most practical knowledge from. It taught me that no matter how stupidly, unreasonably low your prices are, some entitled mother effer will still come to you wanting more. That people will use flattery and interest in your process, whether that be feigned or genuine, as a means of buttering you up for additional requests that they didn't pay for. That you have to be careful about loopholes in your terms, because people will find them and they will exploit them. That my time is better served actually drawing and working on my own projects instead of being an unwilling teacher for some internet rando. That actually sounds like something I still need to work on. And that some people are just way too comfortable sending complete strangers their full body nudes. Like, come on, dude, just make an OnlyFans. I think having at least one bad commission experience is something of a rite of passage for online artists. What about you guys? Have you had bad commission experiences with a customer who was overstepping bounds or expecting things from you that you didn't sign up for? Or maybe you've had the opposite experience and you've been a customer to an unreasonable artist? I don't know how well that experience translates when switching the roles, but hey, I'm open to the notion that it could still happen. Share your past commission experiences with the rest of us down in the comments. Would love to read them. In the meantime, I think we can all sit back, relax, and enjoy a Fanart feature! We have a Succubus Ponder Sprocket drawn by FrancisBTSBoi, taking some fashion inspiration from Morrigan of the Darkstalkers series. Putting some blushies in all the right places, this piece really draws your eyes to the important parts, taking a very anime approach to the highlights and especially the shine along the hair and down the leg closest to the foreground, even framing the whole figure against a beautiful, ominous, shadow-clad moon. Truly a piece that would steal your heart away. For a little more overt, blushy contemplation, we have a cartoon-style bee drawn by Zero March Zero, looking over at you like you've just shown me a sexy Succubus Ponder Sprocket, frankly. March decided to go very minimal on the shading here, mostly drawing our attention to the blushing expression without cluttering things up too much. Their decision to have my character turned slightly away from the viewer whilst also glancing off in a separate direction definitely lends itself well to the expression, almost giving off a more reserved level of intrigued embarrassment. For some cute chibi-esque fun, we have a Ponder Sprocket drawn by Ribbisteak, carefully carrying her happy little tectopus buddy, that adorable grin acting either as a genuine smile or a hint that she knows something that you don't. The way the whole figure almost seems like she's swaying back and forth, carrying the momentum of her little hair danglies, almost gives the vibe that she's rocking Fiend to sleep, or maybe even doing a cute little happy dance with him. Simple, but adorably effective. Marveling at the cute baby being extra cute and extra baby, we have Ponder Sprocket with a teeny tiny Fiend by Sbewyz. Sbewyz. Oh god, words. Letters, opting to combine some painted aesthetics with a more sketchy style of line art that works super well on her hair especially. All the little scattered stray hairs excellently fitting with the additional sketchwork used to frame her figure and bringing out a little more depth in the piece. The choice to blend the color of the line art between a reddish brown and the lighter, softer purple creates a notably welcoming air that I think works perfectly for what's going on. So kudos on making this scene visually endearing and soft, not just in the subject matter, but also in its artistic execution. As a foray into some cartoony aesthetics, we have a brilliant little bee by Vampires Safe for Work, or as the credit says, Pretty Vampire Disaster. See? I can read. Using an artistic style that widens the limbs as they get closer to their ends, this little artistic vampire combines a notable character symmetry with the asymmetrical pose and peace sign for a delicious level of contrast. The cute shadow style that they've used for the nose is also very endearing. It's almost like the bottom of the nose itself is an anime blush. The choice to limit the amount of shadows, presumably so that they don't blend in with the green highlights, was a smart move, and so clearly, this is my persona giving you the go-ahead support on this piece. Very cute. As a double dose of niceness, we have a Ponder Sprocket and a bee bust brought to us by ArtGamingWonder, appropriately framing both of our little bodiless heads against a lovely water-based background, beautifully contrasting Ponder Sprocket and appropriately blending with my persona's different color distribution. My persona's neck even partially fades into the water, like I'm surfacing to grin at someone being a dork. Very accurate. Simple, but effective pieces. Side note, I know the credit says Alice, but I first read it as nice, and like, yeah.
Nice.
Clearly ready to make her threats happen in either the worst or the best way possible, we have Doxxers Get Vored by CleverFox94. Using Fiend's tentacle lights to frame Ponder Sprocket in an ominous and foreboding manner, Clever Fox manages to take what is normally a very welcoming color and use it within a piece that turns that into something potentially more sinister, almost like a trapdoor spider or something. Like she's drawing you in with her protective motherly charm, but it's all an illusion, lulling you into a false sense of security to punish you for your crimes. Basically, exactly what Doxxers deserve. I support. To give us a more dramatic air of fun, we have Ponder Sprocket being lovingly carried by a big, strong robo OC by Freakwithatag. Oh, my dear Cthulhu, I feel so weak because of these deviant weebs. The stability of the nice thicker lines lending itself well to the decision to forego any excessive shadows or highlights. You know, if there's one thing I'm weirdly glad stuck around this channel, it's the phrase deviant weebs. Also, I really like this OC. I don't know what it is about the prospect of a robot with a really big 2003 TMNT Mauser-looking jaw, a snazzy outfit, big old punching gauntlet hands, and a mop of perfectly coiffed hair is just, I don't know, it's such an interesting combination. Look, even Fiend's intrigued by his amazing hair. Opening up to a world of cuteness, here's B Meets Ren by TheAnnonymousKat. For context, for a very long time, because I'm too forgetful to change things regularly, my Twitter profile picture was Ren from a game, the name of which I am also forgetting. It's the cyberpunk yaoi choose your own adventure one where each romantic interest also had a bad ending. If I remember correctly, one of them's a cannibal, one of them's a robot, and one of them is an AI in the robotic body of a dog who later gets a human body so he can also be a love interest for some reason. I'm sure someone in the comments will remind me. Kat has lovingly created a cute little 2-panel comic where I open a Christmas gift to be greeted by the sweetest of little babies. And while I know it's not intentional, it also just makes me think of my actual dog, Demona, which just makes me love it even more. Can confirm this is exactly how this would go down, minus me rolling around on the floor, unable to grasp the adorable in front of me. As a colorless contrast, we have a pure line art piece by UmbraOdd, where Ponder Sprocket is watching with intrigue as Fiend plays chess with the smartest duck you've ever seen. The animal sidekicks are taking the reins on this piece. We've even got an adorable little munchkin keeping a clearly very accurate tic-tac-toe score, flooding our senses with intelligent little cutie pies. I definitely like to think that this duck has read all of the books that they're sitting on. Even without color, this piece points you to a slew of interesting aspects that help to form a fun scene overall. Popping in next and prepared to tell you how dumb someone's being, we have Fiend Be Done With This Shit by Ryan Anderson 32, splaying out the adorable Tectopus boy so that he's steady enough to explain to you, in as few words as possible, how wrong you are in your approach. Ryan not only gives him a softer coloring and lighting to contrast how done with someone's bull he is, but also pairs that with a soft bluish-green gradient for good measure. Fiend cannot speak for himself, so he's gonna be pretty miffed if you use your own gift of speech to waste his time. Do not disappoint the good Octobaby, he doesn't trust humans enough as it is. And finally, we'll end off with a suspicious little stabbing by PCVoltaArt. You may think that this is an exaggeration based on Volta's clearly imaginative thinking, but oh no, they did indeed snap my neck in a game of Among Us. The vibrant to the point colors perfectly selling you on the deceptively adorable nature of the piece. Also perfectly tying in with Volta's nonchalant little shrug. Like, why bother fighting? There is clearly no escape for my dumb little self. That's what I get for not vetting my crewmates. Colorful, cute, and prepped to kill. If you like any of these pieces, please don't hesitate to send some love to the artist through the links that I've provided for you down in the description. If you got your own fan art of myself or any of my characters that you would like to submit, you can do so through emptycomicsfanart at outlook.com. Please also be sure to put your socials in the email so that I know where to credit you, or if you don't have socials or don't want to be credited through them, please make note of that when sending your fan art. Some of you guys just flat out don't include that, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I do not use the emails where you either don't give me socials to credit or don't specify that you are actively choosing not to link them. So if you've ever sent me fan art and you didn't tell me where to credit you, try sending it again, and please include that information. Equally, much like my last video, I would like everyone to please direct your attention to the charity fundraiser attached to this video. Sudan is already one of the poorest countries in the world, but lately has been embroiled in an ongoing civil conflict for months now, and the people who have been displaced, harmed, and attacked as a result of this power struggle are in need of real help. So if you have any funds you can spare to help out, it would be extremely appreciated. Much like last time, even if the charity I've selected here doesn't suit your tastes, I encourage you to find one that does, and help out in any way that you can. We are extremely lucky that we are not faced with a crisis of this magnitude in the West, and we should use our privilege to help where we can. With all that being said, everybody give me a big ol' thanks to Susie Doodletones for helping me edit some more assets and comedy into this video. What did we learn today? Don't get pressured by commissioners who expect way too much out of you than what they paid for. Recognize and act upon your worth as an artist. Charge your worth. Lord knows there are enough people trying to make us obsolete through AI. Fight the power. Stand against injustice. And, actually, that note about entitled commissioners vying to make artists obsolete through the usage of AI and expecting too much from them. I have a video topic for that too. Stay tuned.